crisis, when your country is being threatened, there's an issue of questioning one's loyalty. And when one is branded a potential enemy to one's country, I think that has some deep implications. It's a scar that really never heals. When I hear Pearl Harbor, as some were relating the last few days to Pearl Harbor, it made me shudder somewhat. Even though I had nothing to do with Pearl Harbor, I was 6 months old when Pearl Harbor, 3 months old when Pearl Harbor happened.
Al Hunt, do you share Congressman Bob Matsui's stated concerns that Arab Americans are in for really a tough time legally and constitutionally?
Unfortunately, and socially. I do, Mark. Bob Matsui is a product of one of the most disgraceful chapters in American history. He was 6 months old. He was thrown into an internment camp solely because he was a Japanese American, didn't get out till he was 4 1/2. And I think that's not going to happen today to Arab Americans, but when we hear about Arab American gas station owners being their windows being shot out, people storming mosques, hate crimes being threatened, I think that's a real. There are 4 million Arab Americans, and they're very loyal, patriotic people.
Bob Novak.
Well, for one of the few times, I have to agree 100% with my colleague, Mr. Hunt. It worries me very much, and there is a deeper problem, is that when all of us will get on planes again soon, and we look in the plane and we see an Arab American on the plane, how do we feel? Right. Do we feel, oh my God, this is it? And that is racial profiling, not by the government, but by the individual citizen. And I'm afraid it's unavoidable.
Let me just speak up in favor of some profiling, because I think some profiling is in order. I do not believe American civil liberties would be jeopardized, of any origin, including Arab Americans, if we profiled foreign nationals in this country. That's what we're talking about. These were foreign nationals. And in the reaction to this, airports and security guards are going to act as though Susie Applegate getting on a flight with a car seat and a baby stroller is as likely to be a murderous lunatic as the guy behind her online who is a foreign national on a passport from Syria. And that shouldn't happen to American citizens when there are things we know about the kind of people who perpetuated this, and they're not Americans. They're not citizens of this country, and they ought to be watched more closely.
You know, the way we can reduce our own internal profiling, which we do when we get on an airplane, is if someone else is doing some of what Kate says. The FBI only had 2 of those hijackers in their sights, and one of them was bragging at a strip joint in Florida the night before he flew that plane into the Twin Tower, into the World Trade Center, that there was going to be blood flowing the next day, and he was giving chapter and verse, and no one knew about it. So the FBI is going to have to do a better job here, but we're not a country that would intern anybody these days.
But we start down that road of racial profiling after Oklahoma City. Yep. Should we racially profile young right-wing Christian men because they were members of the militia? They blew up Oklahoma City.
I'm talking about foreign nationals traveling from countries with a track record of producing these kinds of people.
The most dangerous have been militia types. We don't want to racially profile them.
But it's going to make a very unhappy time for a lot of innocent, not foreign nationals,
right?
But Arab Americans. With an accent.
And I will say one thing: when the Shields came to this country, they were foreign nationals too. Yeah. And
these people are not seeking citizenship, Mark. They are not seeking citizenship.
A lot of Arab Americans are. I mean, that goes back to Margaret's point.
They're American citizens.
Specifically following those who are identified as troublemakers. Beyond the Beltway looks at the reaction of the terrorist attack on America by the Arab world and Islam. The Saudi Arabian ambassador to Washington described his conversations with senior U.S. officials. Sorry, we
offered full support fighting terrorism and cooperation with all other friends around the world to help expose those perpetrators.
But the Taliban leaders in Afghanistan issued a warning.
If neighboring or regional countries, particularly Islamic countries, gave a positive response to American demand for military bases, it would spark up extraordinary danger. Similarly, if any neighboring country gave territorial way or airspace to USA against our land, it would draw us into an imposed war.
Joining us now from London is CNN's chief international correspondent, Christiane Amanpour. Thank you for coming in at this late hour, Christiane. Christiane, can the Saudis and the... Thank you. Tell us, can the Saudis and the Pakistanis, can they stand up to the pressure from the Taliban?
Yeah, well, most military analysts don't give the Taliban any chance at all as a military force against any of those countries, against any of its neighbors. What those countries are more concerned about is political pressure from Muslims in their own countries. Both in Pakistan and in Saudi Arabia, there are, extremist Islamic groups who have constantly been putting pressure throughout the years on their political leadership. So that's the bigger concern. But I think you'll find that both Pakistan and Saudi Arabia will do pretty much as they can to accede to what the United States has asked for. They may sort of look for sort of wiggle clauses in public, for the public opinion, not wanting their publics to know exactly the extent of what they're doing, but nonetheless cooperating, as for instance Saudi Arabia has not only in the Gulf War, but in the years that have followed with U.S. military bases and military action in the Middle East since then. And the United Arab Emirates, which is the only other country that recognizes the Taliban, has today said that it is reviewing its relationship with that militia.
Now, just one question further, and that is, if in fact the United States did initiate military action against the home office of the Taliban, is there enough indigenous Taliban support, sympathizers, ideological kindred souls in Saudi Arabia to threaten destabilization there?
Well, it's hard to tell because it's not really the Taliban that have the support in any of these countries. It's more the people who are around Osama bin Laden. He basically has what you might term as a foreign legion of supporters in Afghanistan. People who've come throughout the Soviet occupation from Algeria, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, all sorts of Muslim countries. And those are the people who are the ones that have gone back to their countries and to other countries as far afield as Bosnia, Chechnya, Kashmir, and sort of taken the Islamic struggle. So it's more those kind of people rather than the indigenous Afghanis.
Okay, Bob Novak.
Christiane, do I gather you are optimistic about the ability of President Bush to put together the same kind of coalition that his father formed?
Well, I'm not optimistic or pessimistic. I'm just looking at what is coming out of the capitals since President Bush has, and Secretary of State Colin Powell have been talking about this coalition. And it is, so far, very much in terms of rhetoric at least, almost unanimous support. And I've been looking through a country list of those who have been pledging support, political support, military support. There seems to be an overwhelming desire to help the United States. I think that it'll be, in terms of action, a different action than what the first President Bush had to do. I don't believe that people are thinking about a full-scale, military invasion of Afghanistan. I think there will probably be military action, but I think it'll require, according to what foreign leaders are saying right now, a much more sophisticated and sustained country-by-country, almost detective and financial and all sorts of, multi-pronged efforts to, take the head off what they call this terrorist monster.
Margaret Carlson.
Christiane, I'm wondering if the assassination of Massoud was connected in any way to the recent to the hijackers attacking America, and whether there's any chance of overcoming the Taliban in Afghanistan now that he's gone.
Well, that is a really good question. I mean, Ahmad Shah Massoud and the Northern Alliance controlled about 5% of the territory in the northeast part by the end of the day. Basically, for a while, those lines had been stable. Neither the Taliban could get that last remaining piece of territory, nor could the Northern Alliance push back in any significant fashion. There were only very small shifts of the balance of power there. Did his assassination have anything to do with it? I just don't know. But certainly they're saying that the people who did that were perhaps Algerians who had come and got visas, apparently, through the Pakistan embassy in London and gone out and posed as journalists and done what they did. And it's certainly going to take away a huge basically military planning and the leadership of the Northern Alliance, because Ahmad Shah Massoud is not only the charismatic leader of the resistance to the Taliban, but really known as the local mastermind and the architect of the Soviet defeat in Afghanistan. I mean, he was considered really a formidable foe.
Okay. Kate O'Byrne.
Christiane, about our European allies, this week a French editorial writer told his fellow countrymen, "We are all Americans." How long is that welcome solidarity likely to last?
Well, I think that the thing that I've been most bowled over by is the extent to which there has been solidarity, not just sympathy and shock, which is almost universal around the world, but solidarity, and it has been demonstrated in a way that should make those people who did it know that they are almost entirely isolated, because it's not just Europe, it is all the mainstream Muslim communities in the Middle East have come out and said that this is against Islam. In Iran, an unprecedented joint declaration by the hardliners and reformists condemning this, and there was even a moment of silence at a football match there. In Russia, in Yemen, in all the places, the most unusual suspects, if you like, have condemned this. In Europe, I think they are very conscious that this is not just an American problem. Yes, the attack was directed at America, and make no mistake about it. But there are also extremist groups operating in Europe, threatening the European capitals and threatening the stability there. And they know that this is something that they have to get to grips with.
Go ahead, Christiane.
Christiane, how central is Osama bin Laden to this terrorist network? If he were eliminated, would it be the beginning of the end of the international terrorist network, or would there just be many others to fill the void?
Well, experts say that it probably wouldn't end it completely, but it would do a lot to disrupt it. And disrupting is very important, and that it would take more than just eliminating one person. It would have to be eliminating the ability of his key lieutenants and aides and that sort of top level of that structure. And they believe that if they can disrupt it enough, they can at least buy some time while they try to do what they've said that they want to do, and that is conduct a sustained campaign against this, which is going to really have to be waged at every level. It is exceptionally complicated when it comes to financial support, the ability to forge travel documents, which is apparently quite easy in some European countries. I mean, there are so many elements to this that the leaders say require really sustained and multi-pronged effort.
Christiane Amanpour, thank you so much for your contributions, for your insight, and just for your all-around perceptions and perspective. Thank you very much. And now it's time for us for the outrage of the week. This week we saw the face of heroism in New York City. At last count, 265 New York firefighters were missing and presumed dead. These were the brave who chose to risk and ultimately to lose their lives to save the lives of strangers they had never met. In the hour of maximum peril, each firefighter was truly the captain of his own soul. Let it be noted that each was also a public employee. This week, we also saw the ugly underside of the private sector. When all flights were canceled Tuesday, the Sheraton Airport at New York's JFK Airport immediately doubled its room rates. Profit and greed were sadly written in blood and tears. Bob Novak.
In yesterday's Boston Herald, Democratic Congressman Marty Meehan was quoted as doubting that President Bush sought safety Tuesday for valid security reasons. Quote, "I don't buy the notion Air Force One was a target. That's just PR. That's just spin," unquote. That caused so much commotion that a police guard was posted outside the congressman's office. Meehan said he was misrepresented, but added that he regretted making the comments. And well, he should. there finally comes a time when Bush bashing is not appropriate.
Margaret Carlson.
TV evangelist Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson have blamed two